Right, good morning everybody and welcome to today's Cabinet, June the 22nd. I'm Councillor Spencer Flower, I'm Leader of Council. Just to touch on the arrangements for today, following the government's announcements that social distancing has been extended to the 19th of July, Dorset Council will continue to hold its meetings virtually. For today's meeting, where a decision is required, the appropriate portfolio holder will make the decision taking into account the views expressed by the wider Cabinet membership. So roll call, Peter Wharf, who's Vice Chairman, Ray Bryan, Graham Carr-Jones, Tony Ferrari, Laura Miller, Jill Haynes, Andrew Parry, Gary Suttle and David Walsh. Welcome to you. And officers present today, Matt Prosser, Aidan Dunn, John Selgren, Teresa Levy, Vivian Broadhurst, Jonathan Mayer, and we've got Kate Critchell, Senior Democratic Services Officer, and the two producers, Pauline Weld and Judy Saunders. So we move on now to apologies, Kate. I don't think we've got any, have we?
That's correct, Chairman. No apologies.
Thank you very much. Now, the minutes are on here, but in a normal week, because we were expecting this meeting to be held in person, that hasn't been the case, as I've expressed earlier. So we won't be dealing with the minutes today, but next time we get in the room together, we will deal with the minutes that date back some time now, where they need to be signed off beyond the government decision not to extend the virtual meeting arrangements. So moving on, declarations of interest. Any colleagues got any interest to declare? If not, usual form. If anything crops up, you feel you should have said something to, then please make me aware. Public participation. We've got 4 questions today. Matt Prosser and Jonathan Mayer will take it in turns to read the questions. And we've got 2 questions from Linda Polston, and I'll invite Matt Prosser to read those questions, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Flower. So question 1 from Linda Paulson, preamble, Historic England's consultation response letter to the draft local plan, specifically DOR 13 and the implications of LUC's HIA. Historic England has reserved its position. We consider that further work is needed in response to the Heritage Impact Assessment's conclusions. That's the HIA. The work to include an options appraisal for the routing of the link road, taking into account the HIA's recommendation on the position of the southernmost boundary and the layout, height and design of development, including the use of strategic landscaping, sightlines and key verified issues. My italics from the questioner. The question is, when will Historic England's strongly recommended heritage topic paper, particularly the options appraisal for the routing of the link road, be available to the public? And I think you want me to read the second question straight through from Linda Paulson, so
yes,
that the portfolio holder can answer both together. In 2018, Wessex Water confirmed that a significant part of DOR 13 lies within a groundwater source protection zone. This development represents a risk to Eagle Lodge source, both from a water quality and a recharge perspective. The Environment Agency also expressed concerns jointly with Wessex Water, advised Dorset Council that a hydrological risk assessment should be undertaken, which must demonstrate that the proposal, including construction phase, poses either no risk to groundwater and the aquifers feeding the water source, or that any risk can be successfully mitigated. In addition to concerns about Dorchester's water supply, Dorset Council also required further information about sewerage and flooding. And the second question from Linda is, when will the hydrological risk assessment, strategic flood risk assessment and documentation regarding sewerage be available to the public? And I believe Councillor Walsh will answer those questions.
Thank you very much, Matt. David Walsh.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm Councillor David Walsh, portfolio holder for planning. With regards to the first question, further work is currently being carried out by the site promoters, and we expect it to be in the public domain by the time of the publication stage of the plan preparation. The second question, a strategic flood risk assessment for the whole plan area is being commissioned, and further hydrological work is being undertaken by the site promoters of the North of Dorchester site. We expect these all to be in the public domain by the time of the publication stage of plan preparation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. And the third question is from Mike Allen, and I'll invite Jonathan Mayer to read the question, please.
Thank you, members. The question from Mr. Mike Allen. I would like to ask the Cabinet to express their view on the importance and future of Dorset's green belt and whether it aligns with government policy. The recent white paper, Planning for the Future, states the government's view. Let me summarise. The existing policy for protecting the green belt should remain. The standard methodology does not yet adjust for land constraints, including green belt, but we're considering how to do this. The requirement for housing arising from the standard method should have regard to practical limitations, such as the green belt. Clearly, the government do not intend the standard method to be a justification for releasing green spaces from the green belt for development. Instead, they regard the green belt to be a constraint on development and a limitation on local housing target numbers. Giving evidence to Parliament's Housing, Communities and Local Government Committee, which reported recently, the Minister said that we can achieve our building ambitions without encroaching on important green spaces that we know communities, yours and mine, feel very strongly about. The policy in Dorset recently appears to be opposite to this. The Council's draft local plan sees the standard methods housing target and consequential development as a limitation on the future of the Greenbelt. The Council apparently has taken the view so far that the future extent of the green spaces in the Greenbelt are to be constrained by the standard method, not the other way round. And the question from Mr. Allen, is the Cabinet fully aware of their marked divergence from government policy on this?
Thank you, Jonathan. Invite David Walsh to respond, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Mr. Allen, for your question. The local plan has followed national policy as set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. This allows Greenbelt boundaries to be changed in exceptional circumstances through the preparation or review of a local plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, David. And the last question is from Gerald Duke. I'll invite Matt Prosser to read it, please.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. According to a recent position paper on the local plan submitted to the March 25th committee of the Place and Resource Scrutiny Committee, members will be asked to approve the publication version of the plan in the autumn. Question: which council bodies or committees will be asked to approve the publication version of the plan, or will all members have an opportunity to determine it?
Thank you very much, Matt. I'll invite David Walsh to respond, please.
Thank you, Leader. A revised local development scheme work programme will be brought to Cabinet in July, proposing that the publication stage will now be in spring 2022 rather than autumn 2021. The publication plan will be brought to Cabinet and full Council for approval. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, David. Now we move on to questions from members, and there are no formal questions today. But as always, when we get to agenda items, once the portfolio holder has delivered the report, I will allow non-executive members an opportunity to comment or ask a question before I open it up for a debate by the Cabinet. So move on to the item 6, which is the forward plan. It's, as always, it's fairly busy. There's a lot of work coming through, a lot of activity in the coming months. So I'm not going to dwell on it. It's before us. It's published as it should be. It gives members of the public and everyone else an idea of the sort of work programme that we've got coming forward. So all I'm going to ask you to do, unless there's any comments, is to note the report this morning, members. Can it be noted?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 7. The COVID-19 response, and I'm going to speak to this report this morning. It's a really good report. It sets out the situation in Dorset and all the amazing effort that's been put in by both members, officers, and indeed the public at large in how we've coped with the impact of the COVID pandemic. I don't propose to draw through all of the report before us. I would draw your attention to a couple of things that I thought were particularly illustrative and telling, and that is on page 84. There's a very good illustration of the sort of things that we've had to deal with. I'm not the producers quickly getting to page 84, but it just, for me, it stops having to read lots and lots of detail, but it sets out the amount of money we've distributed from government funding, the amount of PPE, the additional cost burden on the council, and so on. And but I won't dwell on that. And I noticed that we haven't got it in front of us, but it's not the end of the world. I just draw your attention to the 3 recommendations, and I might please invite the chief exec to add to what I'm saying, because he needs to be extremely proud, and I'm sure we all are, of all the fantastic work the officers have done in Dorset Council in the last 16 months. So the 3 recommendations, that continued COVID emergency response is noted in relation to the organisation and incident recovery, that the recovery plan is progressed as directed by the Local Resilience Forum with input from the Council's overview committees, and that Dorset Council plan is reviewed and refreshed in light of the learning from COVID-19 and the revised aims of the Council. So those are the recommendations before us. It's not a formal decision, so we don't have the issues about minded to on this one. It's just a case of acknowledging what's there. I'll let Matt add to what I've said, if I may, and then I'll let Jill Haynes come in. Matt?
Councillor Flower, thank you very much indeed, and rightly the council should be proud of the response that's delivered, but it's delivered it not just as officers and as members of the council, but it's delivered it alongside and with our communities and partnerships with many organisations, and Dorset as a whole should be proud of its response to the COVID pandemic. Of course, we're not out of it yet. It's going to have a long tail. I think Sam Crow, our Director of Public Health, was heard to say very early on in this position, and we'll have to continue to work with our communities. And the last part of that recommendation C, is really important, because we set and agreed our corporate plan a month before we went into lockdown. Full council for Dorset Council met in February 2020 and agreed the corporate plan. And of course, we have a different economy. We have a different set of challenges that face our families, our children, our adults across the Dorset Council area, and we need to continue to work with them and listen to them. And so that when we do get access to resources from government to support rebuilding and change, that we do this with our communities to support our vision for the Dorset being a great place to live, work and visit. And I'll finish there. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much, Matt. Jill Haynes.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you very much. I'm Jill Haynes. I have the Customer and Community Services portfolio. What I'd like to do is just read out a little something and offer some congratulations, because we've had one of our young apprentices, Kirsty Harris, being given the Apprentice of the Year for Business Services by Weymouth College. And I just wanted to read out the citation that Sam Lee gave for her. She was nominated because Kirsty has led her service team throughout the challenges of lockdown and working from home for over 14 months. She has demonstrated a proactive approach to ensuring that she looks after her team's well-being and has put in place Teams rooms for catch-up sessions to keep her team motivated. She has shown a passion to ensure she looks both after her internal and external customers, and has provided excellent customer services in every aspect of her job. And I just thought that's a really nice, good news story that's come out of COVID. So I think the whole of Cabinet would like to give their thanks to Kirsty for her work, and we want to say congratulations for the award. And I think she gets the certificate this Thursday. So that was from me, Cabinet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jill, and very well deserved from what I'm hearing. And it would be remiss of me, wouldn't it, when I talk about us as a council and the community and officers and so on, not to mention the role that our town and parishes have played in the last 16 months. Huge congratulations to them for all the hard work they put in as well. So it's a really collective effort right across Dorset, and I think it shows in the way in which we've coped with unprecedented times. So colleagues, any other member of the Cabinet wish to comment on this report? It's up for noting. So if you're content, I'll just ask you to say noted, and we'll move on to the next item.
No,
Noted.
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 Thank you very much, colleagues. We move on to agenda item 8 now, and it's a finance report, outturn 2020-21, and I'll invite Gary Suttle to speak to the report, please. Gary.
Good morning, Leader. Thank you. I present the financial outturn for 2020-21. The report has no recommendations on the outturn itself, but is integral to the coming year and has significant implications for financial outturn for 21. Because of a recommendation around our use and strategy of reserves. This does not imply the accounts are finalised 2021. However, we anticipate no significant changes. 10.3 sets out how our net budget of 304 million was comprised, and of course at that time no one could predict how our world would change. Initially, I believe we approached the coming pandemic and probable implications of Dorset Council funding with concerns over lost income and the actual cost of requirements to protect Dorset from this terrible disease. We adopted from the outset that no cost was too great to ensure residents were supported and protected throughout. Government assisted with increased general grant, and although income was down, the resilience of Dorset started to show recovery in our financial position. However, despite all efforts to contain costs, when I reported at Q3, we still remained of the opinion the outturn could be as high as minus 18.6 million. However, the improvement, despite further restrictions, has continued, and I'm pleased, if you can be pleased at such a figure, that we now anticipate an overall outcome for the year that means an initial withdrawdown of 15 million. 15 million from our general fund, and let me come back to this point a bit later in the speech. The accounts for 1920 have only just been signed off, and I've had some questions from members. And these are our very first set of accounts. Presentation and technicalities have led to the delay. How we do things in the future and the way the accounts are to be presented will be set down in these accounts. I'm pleased that the auditor, I believe, has now presented audit and governance and has given the final report, and this will be signed off by the Section 151 officer shortly. I would add that I did write to the auditor regarding the delays in early 21 with disappointment with the timescale that these accounts have taken. Accounts for 2021 will be ready by the 31st of July, and I will press for the completion of the audit to be much earlier this year. Matters that have delayed 1920 having been sorted out. I would also like to say that thank you to the finance team. They've been under extreme pressure due to COVID, the grant system, and of course trying to find the time for the endless questions from the auditors. Their professional approach and forbearance in these unprecedented times should be a matter of pride in the council. And if the outcome is slightly late accounts, I for one have no criticism of them. On a technical position, the final figures for the year have shown the allocation of some £7 million of government support to each of the directorate, and that is why some appear to have had different outcomes for the year to those predicted in Q3. Previously, the support was shown in the central budget, and this is shown in the table at 13.7. The paragraphs that follow deal with the details of each directorate. You will see that reference is made to the higher needs block at 13.31, and this remains one of our greatest challenges for the coming financial stability of this council. The work that has been done gives us confidence that we are able to return to a balanced position by 25-26. And I stress that any support required will be made available. The outturn for 2021 of £15 million impacts on the general fund, and at 14.3 you can see that the fund has been bolstered from other reserves to maintain a healthy balance. Clearly, deficits are problems and ones that we continue to tackle on a daily basis. As the year progresses, I will ensure that you are fully appraised of the quarterly outturns. The report also concludes the work the Section 151 officer and his team have carried out to review the predecessor council's reserves and to repurpose and realign them according to the risks and opportunities set out in the paper. And I would commend this new strategy on reserves to you. The report is, I hope you'll agree, far more comprehensive than normal, giving far more information, and in turn we're doing our best to ensure absolute clarity for members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. Now, before I open this up to the Cabinet, are there any non-executive colleagues who wish to put a request to speak in the chat bar? And I've got one from Brian Heatley. Brian.
Morning, Chair. Morning, everybody. I'm Brian Heatley, a councillor from Rodman and Wyke in Weymouth. The figure £15 million appears twice in this document. First as the estimate of the net cost of COVID in paragraph 11.2, but also as the overall overspend if you look at paragraph 13.7. Is that just a coincidence that our overall overspend is the same as the COVID overspend? And am I right in thinking that if we could imagine a year without COVID, and I know that's a difficult thing to imagine, to say the least, we would have come out bang on the nail with a balanced outcome?
Thank you, Brian. Gary?
Thank you, Brian. I'm afraid it is coincidence, and you are right that had we not had the COVID situation, I would have hoped we would have. But having said that, you must look at the support we also received from government, which was quite extensive. And I think whilst I would love to get to that point, to be able to reassure you that that would have been the position, I think that the COVID situation perhaps meant that we were unable to fully give all our resources to the budget. So as you're fully aware, COVID has taken up so much time. And as I say, coincidence at 15 million, I don't believe it would have quite been there, but I think it would have been close. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks for the response, Gary. I've got no other requests to speak in the chat bar, in which case I'm going to open it up to the Cabinet colleagues. Anything you wish to comment on? You've heard what Gary's had to say. It all seems pretty straightforward. The report itself is very, very good, I must say. Sets things out in a very clear way, Gary, and well done to you and the finance team for doing that. It's always important that we get stuff that's easy to understand, and I know that you've achieved that on this occasion. Andrew Parry.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'm really grateful to Gary for highlighting the high needs block pressure that continues to be a challenge for our authority. It is well documented that we inherited a historic deficit from our predecessor authorities, and there is a growing demand and pressure on the high needs block. But Dorset Council is not unique in this area. We know that many councils across the country are seeing significant budget pressures in respect to the high needs block. And I know that you, Leader, and other members of Cabinet have been supporting and lobbying of our MPs to get the message back to Whitehall and Westminster that we do need to see a national solution to the very significant pressures local authorities are facing, including Dorset, in respect to the high needs block. I do hope that we will see recognition of how this is going to be addressed during the course of this year. We know that there are papers that are coming forward from government in respect of meeting special educational needs, but nobody should be under any illusion of the scale of investment that is required in order to meet the needs that are prescribed for our children and young people. And I'm thankful to Cabinet for their continued support in this area.
Thank you, Andrew. And it would be, I suppose at this point, it would be timely to remind ourselves about the £37.5 million investment that's going in. You might just want to elaborate on what I've given you a tag, and it would be useful, perhaps on this occasion, to give us a very short update on where we are with that.
Very much so. So I'm delighted that progress with St Mary's is progressing at speed. Colleagues will be aware that we are currently advertising for a head teacher for the new Dorset Centre of Excellence, which is now a registered form of company, and very quickly behind that will come various other appointments. So we are on course to welcome pupils and young people to the Dorset Centre of Excellence, St Mary's, from 2022. However, we have always said that that is only part of our response to a significant need to meet an increase in demand and need. And I do hope very shortly to bring further papers to Cabinet for decisions on how we are going to meet the sufficiency we will require. And I expect that to happen before the autumn.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I've got nobody else, no other Cabinet members wishing to speak on this item. Can we agree that there's a minded view in support of this report that Gary's put towards us today? Can we agree on that?
Agreed.
And then I'll revert back to Gary now. Given that there's been a minded view, Gary, can you set out your decision, please?
Sorry, the main decision here is to support the principle that we've adopted on reserves. So I would be appreciative if you could agree that. Can also just respond to Andrew's comments about the higher needs block. Just want to say just how proactive, while we wait and lobby government, council has decided to be extremely proactive here and to invest heavily into what we believe will be the solution to bring about the 25-26 balanced budget in this matter.
Yeah, good point, Gary. Thank you very much, colleagues. So given Gary's decision, Jonathan, do you want to come in?
Chairman, Leader, I think I was going to the same place that you were. Could I just confirm that that is Councillor Suttle's decision then?
Yes,
to agree the reserve strategy and statement.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for that, Jonathan. Well, Jonathan said what I was about to say, Gary. So everyone content with that? Agreed. Thank you very much. Oh, goodness me. Let's get back in the room. Let's get back to our normal way we do our business. But in the meantime, we're coping with the reality of the current situation. Let's move on then to agenda item 9. And I'll invite Peter Wharf to speak to the Dorset Council Plan Q4 performance update. Peter.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Councillor Peter Wharf, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Corporate Development and Change, which includes the Council Plan and performance reporting against the Council Plan. There is a lot of information in this report, and this is the 4th report on performance against the Council Plan that has come to the Cabinet. And each report has been successively more detailed and has been of greater content, quality and depth in terms of its data and its information. It is our intention to be open and transparent as to the data and the performance of the council wherever we can. And the reporting that's in this report is being transferred to audit, scrutiny and overview committees so that they can conduct their jobs, concentrating on the areas that they believe are most important as identified in these performance reports. This particular performance report shows data from the period January to March 2021, which is Q4 in our terms, and it highlights where performance is improved, where it's declined, and what we're doing about it. Councillor Flower talked earlier about the council's extensive response to COVID. Now, I want to make it clear that for most services, their response to the pandemic has been in addition to the service delivery detailed in this report. And again, I pass my thanks, my very grateful thanks to all of the officers who put in the extra mile on these efforts in terms of their work. The two reports together paint a detailed picture of the council's extensive activities in recent months. Going into some detail, in this particular report, it shows that there were some significant improvements in children's services measures in Q4, despite the pressure of the pandemic. The rates of children in care, the rates of children in need, the rate of children referrals and the rate of children with child protection plans all reduced, while the percentage of care leavers aged 16 to 25 in education, employment and training improved. Whilst many of these measures remain amber, all are receiving close focus and the overall direction of travel is positive, which means that they're moving in the right direction. In terms of areas of concern, if you look at the report, and I don't wish to go into it in detail, but there will be opportunities for members of this council to go into more detail with the appropriate committee, or to ask me today, but I will refer to the particular cabinet member responsible for those areas. The data shows that there are 5 measures flagged as red, i.e. the most serious of concern that we have. Measures are green, amber, red. 3 of those 5 are as a direct result of COVID restrictions and people not being able to work closely together. 1 is a reduction in apprenticeship started, which was reported in Q3. I would make 2 or 3 comments on that. The first is that that's an annual report. So whilst it was reported in Q3, we will not review it again for another year or so. The second is there has been a general reduction in apprenticeship started in the country, and our reduction is lower than anybody else's that I can see. So whilst it's not good, it's nowhere near as bad as anybody else, and that doesn't mean to say I'm in any way comfortable about it, but it is actually, it reflects the national trend. And the third thing is, you did hear earlier Jill Haynes talk about the excellent news about one of our employees winning an apprenticeship award and being personally flagged for the excellent work that she's done. So I think we are working hard on that. So that's 4 of the reds I've covered, and the 5th relates to highway verge maintenance and a lack of suitable mowers, and these have now been purchased. Some of the reds concentrate on healthy life expectancy among men in Dorset, which has declined in the last 4 years, and it's defined as the number of years that an individual can expect to live in very good or good general health. Several programmes across the piece will be working to address this, particularly those supporting healthy lifestyle behaviours, improving wider determinants of health and tackling health inequalities, although obviously I would make the point that we are but one of many partners who are working on this area to improve it. The council plan, as Councillor Flower referred to earlier, is now being updated to reflect the COVID pandemic and is coming up for what we would call a refresh anyway. And a revised plan will be coming to Cabinet in the autumn. And prior to the autumn, it will be going to the appropriate overview committees for them to have a look at it and make their comments so that members can have an opportunity to feed into the revised plan. But I would make the point it's a refresh rather than a fundamental revision. And if any member wishes to contact me directly, I'm very happy to talk to you about any thoughts you might have. Councillor Flower, that's my report on the council plan. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Before I open it up to the Cabinet, I'm looking for any request to speak in the chat bar, and I'm not seeing any. I will pause momentarily, and if I don't see any, I'm going to move to the Cabinet. Bearing in mind, thank you very much for what your report, Peter. This is to note today, colleagues. Any Cabinet colleagues wishing to comment specifically, or are we able to note Peter's report today? Do I take noted? The silence seems to be deafening in favour of noting. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Move on to agenda item 10 now. Dorset Care Support Housing Community Safety Framework, and I'm going to invite Laura Miller to speak to this report. Laura.
Thank you, Spencer. Yeah, so just some background on the Dorset Care Framework. So we've had feedback from some of our providers that the current framework's really difficult to enter. It facilitates new agencies joining at set times. What we're proposing within the new framework is to address that by opening it up and making it much easier for people to join the framework. We've also got more than one framework at the moment, and so by putting in place one framework for everybody, for all the service user groups, that will actually give the market greater clarity. We also want to develop the market and particularly support micro enterprises, because we know that's work that's really valuable to us. And so by introducing a new framework, that will make it much easier for the smaller providers to join, which in turn will give people more choice in their care and support needs. The reason we're doing it now is because we need to. The current care framework for older people expires on November 2022, and we also need to refresh our care framework for learning disabilities to include mental health provision. So the aim is to have this framework in place by this autumn. What it will do is it offers us opportunities to really provide innovation in the market and to also better meet our priorities. So, you know, really develop that tool for our care framework to better attract a wide variety of providers so that we can really offer the best to the people that need care and support. You can see the recommendations in front of you. You can see the detail. It's a detailed report, and I'm grateful to officers, particularly Leslie and Karen, for producing it. And really, it's all about that kind of trying to reduce our cost pressures for the future, really making sure that we're purchasing the care at the agreed rates, that we've got consistency. It will achieve savings by making sure that, you know, that we can really give choice and really make people, make companies that are applying to join the framework, you know, consistent, get it all in one place, really provide that clarity for the market. So I'm happy to take any questions. You can see the recommendations, you can see the detail. And yeah, just that's our report. That's where we are with the framework, and grateful for any engagement.
Thank you very much, Laura. Again, open to non-executive colleagues who request to speak. I'm not seeing anything in the chat bar, Laura.
Okay.
So again, I will always, as always, pause momentarily, and if there aren't any, I'm going to open it up, as I will do now, to the Cabinet colleagues. Before we get to the Laura's decision, can you, any comments, or are you minded to support?
Support.
Support.
Support. Right, Laura, then set out your decision, please.
Thank you, Chair. So given that Cabinet colleagues are minded to support, the decision is that the procurement process to establish the framework as described in the report be agreed, and that the next step of agreeing service lots within the framework and any subsequent contract awards following further competition and procurement exercises via the framework shall be delegated to the Executive Director of People, Adults and Housing, that's Vivian Broadhurst, after consultation with myself, the portfolio holder for adult social care and health. That's my decision, Chair, and thank you for your support, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Laura. And just for completeness, for the record, having heard the two elements of Laura's decision, are we all supportive?
Yes.
Agreed. Yes. Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 11 now, which is, well, David Walsh is going to deal with the making of 7 neighbourhood plans. So, David, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. I love my job, it's always a pleasure, but this is especially pleasing because we're looking today to make the Arne, Blandford Plus, Chickerell, Milton Abbas, Portland, Puddletown and Shaftesbury neighbourhood plans. Now, Leader, the world has certainly witnessed unprecedented times for more than 15 months. And I'm about to commend to this Cabinet the making of 7 neighbourhood plans, which is certainly unprecedented. And if I were a gambling man, I would bet that it would never happen again. Due to COVID-19 legislation on social distancing, elections and referendums could not be held. So these neighbourhood plans could not be made at the time, though they did carry the full weight of one that had been made with regards to planning decisions. When legislation changed, I was delighted to be able to recommend that all 7 neighbourhood plans proceeded to referendum with the following caveat: that a recommendation to make each neighbourhood plan should be made to a Cabinet meeting after the referendum if the results of the referendum was in support of making that plan and there were no other issues identified that would go against such a decision. I'm very pleased to inform Cabinet that 7 neighbourhood plans went to referendum on the 6th of May, and they were all successfully approved by the residents of their specific locality. As you have read, there are 10 recommendations before you, and I would like at this point to emphasise recommendation J, that the Council offers its congratulations to the town and parish councils involved and members of each neighbourhood plan group in producing successful neighbourhood plans, Because we all know, Chairman, that dedication and hard work goes into developing these plans. And I hope that the importance of each plan is not negated by having to do this en bloc, but I'm sure that each area will be more than pleased, even relieved, that we formally make the neighbourhood plan part of the statutory development plan for the areas that they cover. Furthermore, to correct errors relating to the maps in the Blandford Plus and Chickerell neighbourhood plans. In addition, I'd like us to recognise the significant amount of work undertaken by all those involved and to congratulate them on their success. At this point, I would like to say that if I make these plans today, there will be 28 made neighbourhood plans in the Dorset Council area, which I think is pretty phenomenal. I've been involved in this as neighbourhood plan champion since Mr. Pickles had the idea. This is a hugely impressive figure and shows the desire of our communities to positively plan for their areas. And let us remember that none of this would be possible without the support of our planning policy officers who help neighbourhood plan groups, normally without any planning experience, to actually write planning policy that stands up to examination. So I would like to thank Ed Gerry, our community planning manager, and his team for all the work they have done and continue to do to enable our communities to develop their own neighbourhood plans. Now, as I've said, Leader, there are 10 recommendations before you, and I'll open these up for discussion before I go through them in detail when I announce my decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Well, again, non-executive members who wish to request to speak in the chat bar. I'm not seeing any, so I will, as usual, pause slightly. So open up to the Cabinet colleagues, David, first. Any colleagues wishing to comment on anything David has said so far? I'll take silence as no. If not, we'll move on, David, to your recommendations, please.
Thank you then, Leader. I assume you mean my decisions.
Or decisions. Oh, sorry, I meant decisions.
Yeah,
yes.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you. My decisions are as follows. That the Council makes the Arne Parish Neighbourhood Plan 2018 to 2034 as set out in Appendix A, part of the Statutory Development Plan for the Arne Neighbourhood Area. B, that the Council makes the Blandford Plus Neighbourhood Plan 2011 to 2033 as set out in Appendix B, part of the Statutory Development Plan for the Blandford Plus Neighbourhood Area. And C, that the Council agrees to make a small number of minor modifications to that Blandford Plus Neighbourhood Plan 2011-2033 in order to correct errors relating to the Green Infrastructure Policies map and the local green space inset maps in connection with the Bradbury Heights open spaces and the Trailway. The updated maps are set out in Appendix C. Decision D, that the Council makes the Chickerell Town Neighbourhood Plan 2019 to 2036 as set out in Appendix D, part of the Statutory Development Plan for the Chickerell Neighbourhood Area. Decision E, that the Council agrees to make a minor modification to the made Chickerell Town Neighbourhood Plan 2019 to 2036 in order to correct an error relating to the labels on Map 3, page 10. The updated map is set out in Appendix E. And Decision F, that the Council makes the Milton Abbas Neighbourhood Development Plan 2019-2031 as set out in Appendix F, part of the Statutory Development Plan for the Milton Abbas Neighbourhood Area. G, that the Council makes the Portland Neighbourhood Plan 2017-2031 as set out in Appendix G, part of the Statutory Development Plan for the Portland Neighbourhood Area. H, that the Council makes the Puddletown Neighbourhood Plan 2019-2031 as set out in Appendix H, part of the Statutory Development Plan for the Puddletown Neighbourhood Area. That the Council makes the Shaftesbury Neighbourhood Plan 2019-2031 as set out in Appendix I, part of the Statutory Development Plan for the Shaftesbury Neighbourhood Area. And Leader J, that the Council offers its congratulations to the town and parish councils involved and members of each of the neighbourhood plan groups in producing successful neighbourhood plans. Leader, if I may, and I know this is going off piece, but I noticed that the community planning manager is with us, Ed Gerry, and I wondered if he would like to say a few words.
Ed, would you want to comment?
Yeah, briefly. Thank you, David. Thank you, Councillor Flower. I mean, I would just reiterate the point that Councillor Walsh has made in terms of congratulating the neighbourhood plan groups and the qualifying bodies involved, and also their appointed consultants. It takes a lot of time and commitment over many years to produce a neighbourhood plan, and that should never be underestimated. And they are the groups themselves, they're all volunteers who are doing it in their spare time. And also I'd just like to thank all of the officers who've been involved with working with those neighbourhood plan groups over many years as well. And that's obviously members of my team in terms of the community planning team, but there are also other officers who are working in the spatial planning service who are now more focused on the local plan work, who have previously been involved with helping those neighbourhood plan groups as well. So it's been a fantastic collaborative effort, and to have 28 made neighbourhood plans in the Dorset Council area is superb, and I haven't looked into it, but I suspect it's one of the highest number across the country. So that really does show the commitment to neighbourhood planning in Dorset.
Thank you very much, Ed. And yes, it certainly does. And, you know, I'll add my congratulations to all the work, not only officers in Dorset Council, David and others have made, but also the immense amount of time and effort put in by volunteers across Dorset in making this the neighbourhood planning opportunities come to life, and it's brilliant. So, colleagues, you've heard David's various or a number of decisions. Are you content to note and support his decisions?
Yes. Noted.
Noted. Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 12, which is low carbon Dorset grant payments. I'll hand over to Ray Bryan.
Thank you, Chairman. I am Councillor Ray Bryan. I hold the portfolio for highways, travel and the environment. Chairman, this is a good report, and I would normally recommend the principle of the report. However, there are some points of detail which I think would be helpful to clarify in the report. I am therefore requesting consideration of the report be deferred until the July meeting, when there are minor amendments can be included. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ray. Well, we're not going to go into any. Ray's tabled a deferral. Can I have a seconder for that, please?
Second.
Thank you, Tony. And can we all agree?
Agree.
Okay, report deferred until the July meeting. It's, as always, Ray and all the rest of you, it's very, very important. If there's any points of detail that any cabinet member isn't content with, so important that we get it right. So we make our decisions based on solid detail. So quite right to defer it, Ray. So I'm going to, without further ado, I should move on to agenda item 13 now, which is the Weymouth Harbour Escapade Flood and Coastal Risk Management Strategy outline case. And I'll hand over to Tony Ferrari. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. This is the second of 3 stages that the Harbour and Esplanade flood defence work will need to get to process through Cabinet. The first, which we took through some months ago, was the principal decision. The Environment Agency have a series of hurdles whereby applicants have to develop their case in more detail, and this is the next stage in that process. So what we've done is approved the general principle of these harbour works. This stage is to authorise a detailed study which will refine much more detail about the works, the timing of the scheme itself, which will inform the third stage, the final submission to the Environment Agency, for which they will give us approval and the finance to carry out the work. Now, this is likely to reveal the issues that we need to deal with in Weymouth Harbour, and it's exactly the right process that we should be following. It's a really good news story that takes us towards a much more secure future, reducing flood risk from Weymouth, and it's a report that I thoroughly support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. Again, open to non-executive colleagues on a request to speak. I'm not seeing any. So in that case, I'll open it up to, oh, there is one from Shane Bartlett. Shane. Where are you, Shane?
Thank
There
you.
are.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate this is a report about Weymouth, and I must commend the detailed report. It is quite a phenomenal report, and it's eye-watering numbers obviously involved in it. But could I just ask a question surrounding Dorset Council and its greater strategic plan for our coastline, bearing in mind that we're looking at possible sea level rises by 2120 of 3.75 metres. So just I wondered whether, in regards to Weymouth and a 1 in 200 year event, how does this tie in with other seaside towns in Dorset, a potential risk of flooding and coastal erosion, such as Swanage and Lyme Regis? Will these towns be requiring a similar strategic plan during the running and concurrently with the Weymouth one? And I just wondered where we were with that and the possible financial implications or risks associated with that to the council.
Okay, thank you, Shane. Good question. Tony?
Clearly, we need to consider the impact of sea level rise on all of our coastal communities, and that's a programme of work that we'll be working through. This paper is a specific bid because the Environment Agency gave us a forum in which to bid it, so that's what we're bringing forward today. But there is we will have to work through all of the coastal communities to look at the impact on all of them.
Thank you.
Future piece of work, in other words, Shane.
Yeah,
thank you. Good point. Right, there are no other requests to speak. Colleagues, any comments on what Tony's presented? Again, I'm not hearing anything. So Tony, John, did you want to come in?
Sorry, Chairman, I was just preparing for agenda item 14.
Oh, all right, okay, all right, okay, right. Go back to your Tony. You want to set out your decision,
My
please?
decisions, yes.
Yes, please.
Thank you for the comments this morning. I agree that the Weymouth Harbour and Esplanade Flood and Coastal Risk Management Strategic Outline Case Appendix 1 for submission to the Environment Agency's large project review group. I authorise officers to develop the outline business case towards deliverable schemes for inclusion in Dorset Council's future capital programme, and I authorise use of existing capital budget to deliver the outline business case. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Cabinet, can you confirm your support for Tony's decision, please?
Confirmed.
Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 14 now, and we've got John Selgren here with us.
Thank you, Leader.
At least one of these anyway. So we've got a couple of items that have come from the from overview. One is, the first one, Ray, is yours. Agenda item 15, the management of council-owned trees.
Just before we take the item, would it be helpful if I just set out the context of the Minded To decision I took following the overview committee? And I think Councillor Brown.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's fine, John. Yeah, so, yeah.
Leader, members of the public, just to confirm, I attended in full the meeting of the Place and Resources Overview Committee held on the 1st of June and listened to the presentation of the two reports that are at items 15 and 16 this morning. And having heard the presentation and the debate that followed on the two, was minded to, in respect of both reports, to take the decision to recommend both of these two policies for consideration by Cabinet. I subsequently have considered and reflected on that matter and read the minutes of that meeting, and therefore, Chairman, it's for that reason I took the decision to recommend the management of council-owned trees and the street naming and numbering policies to Cabinet for consideration this morning. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, John. Reminded me of what I should have done before you came in, but absolutely spot on with that. So now over to you then, Ray. Council-owned trees.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Leader. As part of our climate and ecological strategy and action plan, trees play a very important part in our aims to reduce carbon emissions down to zero by 2040 or sooner. The report is detailed, 26 pages long. So I'm going to ask Matt Reeks to highlight the main points of this report, and then I'll come back and deal with the recommendation.
Thank you,
Over
Ray.
to you, Matt.
Morning, Matt.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, councillors. The report before you seeks to bring together a number of high quality policies and strategies from predecessor authorities into one coherent tree policy for Dorset Council, which will provide the scaffolding for the management of the 250,000 plus trees which Dorset Council is responsible for. As Councillor Bryant has already indicated, trees do play a significant part in the Dorset Council approach to the climate and ecological emergency. And as a result, we've made an important change to the policy, which says that any tree that is removed, which will only be removed for sound arboricultural reasons, will be replaced by 2 or more suitable replacements, a significant increase from the none or 1 replacement in the previous policies. Also to worth note is the involvement in the construction of this policy of the Health and Safety Executive, whereby we have increased the inspection frequency from 5 to 3 years and 10 to 6 years respectively for our highway trees to ensure the maximum safety of users of the highway and members of the public. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Matt. Right, Ray, have you got anything else to add?
No, Leader.
No? Okay.
Not at this moment.
At this moment, anyway. So I've got a couple of requests to speak. First one is Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Chairman. At this page 916, can I just ask that there seems to be no mention of tree inspections taking place in council-owned car parks within the report? Maybe it's there, but I couldn't find it. And I was also just wondering whether this policy should be adopted by town and parish councils in Dorset for an approach of continuity. Was there any consultation with town and parish councils on this? And also, where it says in the policy that there would be a 2-for-1 planted, so maybe there's certain instances where we can't plant 2 trees in the place of 1. And being as we own a lot of county farms, are we going to set land aside so we can actually maintain that policy and plant trees in another area, so we can get that 2-for-1? Thank you.
Comments, Ray or Matt?
Yeah, if I can come back on that, and again, Shane, you raised some excellent points. First of all, communication with the town and parish councils is always an ongoing thing on things like this. They own a considerable amount of property where trees are around. Yes, the county farms is an issue, and we have to make sure that the policy is utilised to its best in controlling what happens on the county farms, and I'm heavily involved in that. And last but not least, you raise the subject of the 2-for-1. If it can't be planted where we would like it to be planted, then we need to find an area where we can push the overflow to, and that is again something we are working on. I'm going to ask Matt whether he wants to add anything to that.
Matt?
Thank you, Councillor. If I may, the car parks will be covered under the land around council buildings and open spaces at the 3-year inspection frequency. In terms of the replacements, we work on the right tree in the right place approach. So as Councillor Bartlett says, there may be instances where 2 replacements cannot be planted in the location where the tree was removed. But that sort of net stock will be planted across the Dorset Council estate as discussed. And also worth note, our tree inspectors who are ultimately enacting this policy work very, very closely with town and parish councils, partly in a subcontracting role to provide expert professional guidance where necessary, but also in a liaison role to help town and parish clerks adapt and create their own policy for trees in their management.
Okay, thank you for that response.
Could I come back, please, Chairman?
Yeah, very briefly, Shane.
Yeah, it was just a request that we actually put car parks in that report, just to clarify things, just to tidy it up.
Yep. Okay, point well made.
Thank you.
Matt Hall.
Thank you, Leader. Not only speaking as a ward councillor, but also somebody with 20 years plus experience and qualifications in horticulture, I need to make the following points. Across many parts of Dorset now, residents are living in darkness. At some point in the past, a council planted trees that have no longer been looked after or cared for. Some of these trees are now in excess of 50 feet. People are living in darkness or having to permanently have lights on. They cannot grow things in their garden because of the shade and the taking away of moisture. In the winter, they are inundated and swamped by leaves. A proper system of pollarding and canopy reduction would improve the lives of many residents and allow for proper inspections of such large trees. You cannot do a proper inspection of a tree that is in the region of 50 feet looking from the ground. This policy doesn't seem to address this, and I think it really should. The issue of the right tree in the right place runs the risk of being a misnomer. It almost suggests that we are admitting that in the past, the wrong trees have been planted in the wrong place. If we are to plant the right trees in the right place, then we need to do a system of improvement in the council's knowledge base for tree planting across the county and what parameters we will put in. I will give you a real life example. In the year of the Shadow Council, 3 white beam trees were planted on little fields in Sherborne. White beams, Sorbus aria, are classed as native to England, so could be classed as the right tree in the right place. Why on earth you would want to plant a 15-metre tree in a narrow verge within a stone's throw of a block of flats seems to me to be totally ridiculous. Within the first year, these 3 trees had died because the ground that they were planted in between November and March sits in water. These 3 trees were taken out and were replaced by 3 white beams. Lo and behold, the 3 white beams died because it's too wet. After chasing around and finding the correct officer, we finally convinced them that hawthorn should be planted, a far smaller tree that will put up with the weather conditions. These trees are thriving, but it has taken the planting of 9 trees and 9 lots of money to get to a successful conclusion. We need to have a system in place that actively acknowledges the topography, the weather conditions and the ground itself within the areas where trees are planting. Otherwise, we are simply wasting money.
All right, Matt, thank you. I'm going to draw you to a close now. I think you've made your point well. Quick comment from either one of you, either Ray or Matt.
Yeah, if I can just point out that this is the policy for council-owned trees. Obviously, I'm very happy to speak with Matt outside the meeting. I work as closely as I can with him, and issues that he raised are serious ones. So I'm prepared to get a conversation with myself and Matt Reeks to discuss ways in which we can help resolve the problems that he's looked at. But his points are well taken.
Thank you. Anything to add, Matt?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I can't see any other requests to speak, so I'll open it up to Cabinet colleagues. Any comments to add to what's here? If not, I'm going to invite Ray to Andrew Parry.
Thank you, Chairman. Only in respect of the type of trees that we do plant in close proximity to any buildings or residential areas. I did have experience in the former county council where unfortunately an entire row basically of silver birches fell foul of some particular disease and had to be felled. When it came to the arboricultural team, whose work is truly brilliant and excellent, to plant replacement trees, what we did find was a reaction from residents very quickly concerned that new trees may have roots that grow under their property and cause forms of subsidence that concerned them. What we did find was that when they then engaged with officers and it was explained to them that the certain types of varieties we use, we understand don't have those long-reaching roots that would cause such destabilisation, they were comforted by that. So really what I'm saying is, could we look at how we communicate through our comms team where we are planting varieties of trees so that residents can be reassured that they are not likely to experience difficulties going forward in respect of drainage and foundations.
Thank you, Andrew. Ray?
Yeah, I actually fully concur with what Councillor Parry is saying. This is part of an educational process. We need to educate people on what are the right trees for the right places. Roots will always be a problem for buildings if put in the wrong place. I have a willow tree that causes me all sorts of agonies because its roots spread everywhere. But this policy, I think, is important as a step forward. This isn't the end. We need to look at how we adapt our thinking about trees to fit in with our climate policy and strategy that we've already put forward, that actually goes to full council next month. And once that is done, then further work will take place on trees. This is the start, not the end.
Thank you very much, Ray. Any other Cabinet colleague? If not, I'll move to Ray. Can you set out your decision, please?
Yes, I confirm it is my decision to approve the management of council-owned trees policy.
Colleagues, can we happy to support that? Supported. Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 16, street naming and numbering policy. I invite Peter Wharf to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Peter Wharf, Deputy Leader, Cabinet Member for a variety of things, plus, bizarrely, street naming and numbering. Before I go on to the bones of the report, I would like to make the comment that street naming and numbering is viewed as exceptionally important by many people, parish councils particularly, and developers. And it's very important that where we can, we arrive at an agreed resolution as to what a street name and number might be for each properties in development opportunities. And that is our goal. This policy is just where we failed to make that agreement. Can I also add, when I presented this to the overview committee, I remember Councillor Les Fry nodding furiously when I raised the issue that most people don't realise that if you have a house name, it can make it very difficult for emergency services to find your house. And if we are talking of an emergency, fire, ambulance, police, then it actually is essential that these emergency services can find their way. And whilst if you say to a 999 caller, yes, my house is done roaming, that isn't going to help the services find it. So it's really important that we have a number wherever possible, plus a street name that is agreed, so that emergency services can find it and that the post office can deliver mail, etc. I will briefly go through the policy and then I'll just talk through the helpful suggestions that were made at the overview committees when I took it before there. The policy is that we have a responsibility for providing address updates via the local land and property gazetteer to the National Land and Property Gazetteer, and the policy establishes a single consistent approach for the whole of Dorset Council, which actually harmonises a variety of disparate contexts and policies which we inherited at the formation of the Unitary Council. And as a footnote, it's something that developers are very, very keen on, because development doesn't obey old district council boundaries, and they want a policy that they understand and can work towards. The policy confirms our compliance with BS 766 and the unique property reference number, Street names are normally proposed by the developer, and we ask that the developer engages with the local town and parish council for feedback on the proposed street name. Now, we can make the final decision where the developer and the town and parish councillor cannot agree, although we encourage them to engage together. I'm sure you recognise that the developer has an interest because this is part of their marketing exercise, and developers view a good name of a street as being an essential part of the marketing, and a bad name might affect it. And town and parish councils quite reasonably want names that have a reflection of the local community and are consistent with other names. Now, I would just point out that naming after people is normally not allowed, particularly living people, and we all know that there is a problem, that there can be a problem with naming streets after individuals as their reputations changed or whatever. Deceased individuals may be acceptable, but as I said, careful consideration needs to be given to it. The policy defines acceptable suffixes, and it provides guidance on numbers in streets and sets out the process for individuals seeking to change the naming of a property or numbers, etc., although this may result in a charge. There are a number of other things in the policy, but I won't go through it in detail. I would like to thank the Overview Committee for a very reasonable and very useful discussion on it. I have, as a result of that policy overview committee, I've changed paragraph 6.1 to confirm that all new properties will be given a number unless they are on a street without a numbering scheme, which thankfully is very rare. Paragraph 5.6 has been edited to allow for street names that do not have a suffix where appropriate, as it wasn't clear. And Councillor Took raised the concern that the suffix way may be confusing, and we have investigated that, and the suffix way has been used for both a main thoroughfare and a pedestrian route in the past, and is considered appropriate for either uses. So I recommend this policy to go forward in order to provide consistency for street naming and numbering within the future. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Peter. I've got one request to speak from Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Chairman. I should say as well, the last item, that I did leave it too late to speak to the portfolio holder and to the Officer Matt Reeks concerning the issues I was raising in that on what was otherwise an excellent report. Thank you for allowing me to make that comment. Obviously, I'm Councillor Shane Bartlett, Ward Member for Wimble Minster, and I am delighted to see this policy finally coming through. It was needed a long time ago, and unfortunately my town has suffered with street naming because this policy wasn't in place. The chairman will know that I did attempt to, through my town council, get a couple of street names that did involve people, and we met with a lot of resistance from officers. So I'm highly delighted that this policy's finally come through. I'm a little bit concerned about what surrounds actually naming streets after people, deceased people, and I think it should only be deceased people. And I do appreciate the risks involved, that sometimes those reputations over the years can deteriorate as things come to sight. But I think in most instances, I think it is a pretty safe policy to do that. So, as I say, I welcome the policy. I would just laying down a marker at this moment, though, because we did have developments. As I say, Wimborne was very unfortunate in its timing over this. We had developments to come forward. Not all developers did communicate and consult with the town and parish council. So I'm just laying down a marker that should there need to be a go back to rename roads at the town council, and I'm not saying they will because they haven't had that discussion yet, but should they decide that they would like to rename some of the roads, that could be treated leniently by Dorset Council. If that was to occur because of the situation that we were in. We have had roads that have been named after individuals, don't know where they come from and who they are. It just seems they were picked out of a hat. And I think I agree with you, Deputy Leader, that it is extremely important that parish councils have the ability to name roads after their history, their culture, their geography, their geology, and the localism and the historic individuals that they had within those parishes. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Shane.
Chairman, can I just respond briefly to the points that Councillor Bartlett has made? First of all, if I didn't make it clear, streets may not be named after living individuals.
I agree.
They may be named after the deceased individuals, but we are recommending that very careful consideration should be given to potential future perceptions. Excuse me, and this is covered in 5.4. I would also point out that where a developer has not engaged, Dorset Council may allocate official addresses for emergency services purposes with no further consultation within 3 months of a completion date. So there is, that is something of a backup where the developer is not engaged and the parish council has tried very hard. Clearly, my aim in this policy is that we get agreement between town and parish councils and developers wherever possible. Because if it comes to Dorset Council, we are going to disappoint somebody, and I prefer not to do that. But the policy is set out so that that disappointment will be within a framework. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, Shane. I've got no other requests to speak in the chat bar, so I shall move on and open it up to Cabinet colleagues. Anybody wishing to comment on, add anything to what Peter set out very well? If not, I'll move to Peter's decision, please.
My decision is to implement the policy as outlined in the Cabinet report.
Cabinet colleagues, you happy to support that decision?
Support.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to agenda item 17, which is an update on any policy development matters that have been referred to overview committees for consideration. I haven't heard that there's anything specific we need to refer to today, but if I'm wrong, say something, Cabinet colleagues. If not, I'll move on to the next item. Right, I should move on. Now I got portfolio holder and lead member update summary. Now these get published with the minutes of the meeting, and I think it's a very welcome introduction of giving a bit of an insight for members and the public at large, an idea of some of the work that's going on in the background sometimes, particularly with lead members. And I'm going to pick on Laura Miller today because I read her report last evening. Laura, and you might wish, I know you've made reference to one of your lead members, and I'm quite content if you wish to invite him to speak to his own part of your report. Over to you.
Brilliant, thank you, Leader. Yes, so yep, you've got our update in front of you. You'll have seen it. It's published. What we've been up to as a team, so we've been looking quite closely at our joint health scrutiny protocol. We've had discussions around that, and that was taken to People and Health Scrutiny Committee. The work continues with our Better Life Stakeholder Advisory Group. That's basically our co-production with the charitable and voluntary sector on our transformation work in adults. It's going really well, and we're looking at our co-production agreement with them. I will let Simon talk about the carers work that we've been doing, but we've had a workshop recently, I think only yesterday, with our People and Health Scrutiny members on how we improve our offer. We've had an away day with our senior leadership team, which focused on our demand, our cost and our strategy in adult social care. And I've also been attending emergency surge testing briefings, festival and large event safety briefings with our public health colleagues to make sure that we are prepared should we need to surge test, and also that our large events that are going ahead are compliant and safe. We went to a site visit with a company called Inspired Villages, and we learnt about their supported living offer, which is very interesting, enabling people to have sort of greater choice in the market when they perhaps are planning for care and maybe just a little bit of support in their old age, which was really interesting. Simon, I'm going to hand over in a minute, but just a quick update, which isn't in my report because I didn't put it in at the last minute, and I apologise for that. I will amend it and resend it from Piers Brown, who's my other lead member. He's doing some work on using the Integrated Better Care Fund to make our self-referral process a lot better. That's 20% of our clients. And if we can make that work better, that should reduce workload. And he's also looking at some contacts with Hampshire Council, who are doing a trial of exoskeletons. So this is with his brief on technology-enabled care. And an exoskeleton is basically a robot skeleton that you wear, and it can reduce the need for doubling up care visits. So that's some really exciting stuff that's happening in the tech world, amongst others. And I'll if with your permission, Leader, in the near future, I'll call on Piers to go into a bit more detail. But
Yes, please do.
Simon, if you would like to just come in and just talk a little bit about the day opportunities and the carers work that you've been doing, that'd be brilliant.
Over to you, Simon.
Good morning, Leader, and thank you, Laura. Laura's asked me to start on two pieces of work mainly, as one of the two lead members in the Adults Directorate. One, as Laura said, is refreshing our carers offer. We had a good workshop yesterday, and lots of interesting things came out of that. So we're going to take some of those suggestions away, work with our commissioned partners in Care Support Dorset, and come back during the summer with some recommendations, which we'll go through overview to how we can revamp our carers offer to make sure that it's up to date and make sure that everybody knows what the offer actually is. I think this is especially important at the minute, especially after all of the work that carers have done during COVID. It really is our responsibility to make sure that we're doing all we can. The other piece of work, Leader, is on day opportunities. We've had a members briefing on that, and today is the launch of our formal next stage of the engagement work. All members have been sent it. It's a huge piece of work. There's over 100 different parts of engagement, including user groups, and a councillor survey that I launched yesterday. So just a quick plea that if any members haven't received the email, let me know, and if they have received it, can they fill it in and get back to me? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Simon. Any final point? Laura, are you happy with that?
No, that's great, and just really to highlight the engagement for the day opportunities as well. That there's a huge engagement over the summer. Really months of sessions, and looking at how people use our day services and what they want for their futures and what they want to do with their days. So really, if everybody, members of the public, colleagues, officers, anybody, just have a look, because it is literally a summer of engagement, and I'm really proud of the work that's been going on there. It's a great piece of work.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. You've got one question from Paul Kimber. I will allow it, Paul.
Oh, thank you, Spencer. You are generous.
I know I am.
Just to say to Laura, thank you for the fantastic presentation yesterday. And you did allude to it just now in the presentation. My concern is getting the information out to people. We all tend to lead busy lives, and suddenly and I've experienced this, suddenly you have to stop everything because we need the services of care. So it really is a request is to make sure that this whole thing is circulated right through the community of Dorset. Thank you, Laura. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much, Paul. I think you can say yes to that, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. That will be a massive part of the refresh of the strategy.
Brilliant.
So yeah, not a problem.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for your reports on this today. So we move on now to agenda item 18. Ray, bit of an update on climate ecological emergency.
Yes, thank you, Leader. It's a fairly brief one. The Climate and Ecological Strategy and Action Plan, as we know, goes to full council next month. That being successful, we can then get on with an increase in the work we are already doing, because we are doing a lot of work behind the scenes at the moment, which I intend to bring to the public domain in the very near future. People are aware we were successful in obtaining a substantial amount of funding from the central government to decarbonise some of our council-owned buildings. Work is going on to ensure we use this money wisely. 3 issues that we are working on are supply availability, available contractors to install the new equipment, and it'll be no surprise that pricing of product is a concern. This has been dealt with by our procurement team. These 3 issues are dealt with on a regular basis. We meet every fortnight to get updates from the team, and I've got to take my hat off to the team for the work they're putting in on this, as well as trying to do their normal jobs. They have heavily committed to delivering the result that we need from the money we've been given. Again, just so people are aware, I am still holding regular meetings with Minister that is covering the climate emergency for the UK government. And we're seeing some very favourable things coming out of those meetings. And I look forward to being able to report further on those at future meetings. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. I'm not going to. Anybody want to ask any points on what Ray's just said? If not, I think we'll move on, if that's fine. Urgent items. We haven't got any urgent items today, so I need to move into exempt business. Can I have a proposal for exempt business, please?
Yes, Leader, I propose exempt business.
Seconder, please.
Seconded, Chairman.
Thank you very much. All agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much, members and members of the public. This part of the meeting will now close and we'll go off into exempt business. Thank you all very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.